All right. So chapter 7 is all about thinking. Thinking is going to be a really important aspect of your collegiate career, regardless of what your major is going to be. Okay, so this is a chapter outline. We're going to talk all about different ways that you can think here at the university level. Okay, the 4 questions I want you to think about, haha, no pun intended, in chapter 7 is your approach to problem solving, about your creativity level, and if you're actually thinking about how you learn and how you can find and evaluate valid information. We did this a little bit when you were trying to decipher what the best type of references were for your research check. Okay, learning outcomes for this chapter. Knowing about thinking as a process and why thinking is important, why creative thinking is important as well. A little bit about analytical thinking, critical thinking, how to problem solve, what metacognition is basically the way that you think, and what information literacy is. Okay. So here are some examples of some thinking games to help refresh your mind. If you ever need a little boost, if you think your mind is kind of getting stagnant, if any of you have played Sudoku or done crossword puzzles, these are also great ways to get your mind thinking. Even things like Words with Friends or trivia games or Song Quiz on Amazon. These are all things to kind of get your brain flowing, maybe in the morning when you're getting ready. My husband and I play Song Quiz against each other every morning. I usually lose, but it gets my mind thinking. Okay, so let's talk about creative thinking first. Hopefully you have a creative mind, and being creative doesn't mean that you know how to draw. A lot of people think, well, I am not artistic at all. I am not creative. You could be a creative thinker without having creative talents. Okay, so there's different ways to define what creativity is. Okay, and we're also going to talk about unconventional ideas or having a creative way of doing something differently. Okay, so creativity is going to help you think clearly, help you resolve problems, or come up with unique ideas of how to solve a problem, and how to kind of reset if there's a setback. Have you ever heard of someone saying, well, the silver lining is this? They're probably able to think creatively, excuse me, about a bad situation. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can think of some ways that creative thoughts may help you become a better student. Okay. All right, so creativity is the highest level of thinking skills, and this is a image you may have seen before. This is called Bloom's taxonomy. The one on the right is the new and improved version of what the kind of pyramid of creative thinking is, or how people are able to learn. So when you were in K-12, you may have had tests where you were asked to remember things. That may be something that you were asked to do and kind of regurgitate information. That's the lowest level of learning. Learning something, remembering it, and putting it back out for a test. In college, you're going to be expected to do higher levels of learning and thinking. Okay, so an example of Bloom's taxonomy I like to talk about is with the planets. When you were in 3rd grade, you may have been asked, what are the 8 planets? When I learned them, there were 9, but we're not going to go there. Sorry, Pluto. Okay, so what are the planets? You maybe had a mnemonic device, like my very energetic mother just served us nachos, right? So from Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and you were able to remember them. Okay, you didn't know maybe what they look like or anything about the planets, but you could remember the order. Okay, lowest level. Then maybe you were asked to understand it. Maybe you were asked, okay, talk about the distance from the sun. Okay, maybe you have to understand what that meant, that maybe Mercury was the hottest because it was this many, miles from the sun. Earth, is this far away from the sun. So, that's how hot Earth can be. And then you have to apply it. Be like, okay, well, maybe they had you do a paper on what would life be like if you lived on Mars, right? And you would have to apply your knowledge about gravity and how hot it would be on Mars and things like that for if we would be able to have a life there. And then you might have to analyze it, be like, okay, what would the differences be between living on Mars and living on Earth, and kind of compare and contrasting. And then maybe you did an evaluation on what it would take for scientists to recreate our lifestyle on Earth on Mars. What would be a plan of action that they would have to do? And if you were a scientist, what would you do? And then maybe you do some sort of research project where you, do an experiment in a lab and kind of recreate what it would be like to live on Mars. And you can actually test your hypothesis of if it would be possible. So you can see it's all about the planets, but you were able to learn and in a more mature fashion as those steps went up. Okay. So if we didn't have creative thinkers, we would not have man land on the moon. We would not have cell phones. We would not have even our US Constitution, because our founding fathers thought differently than what they grew up thinking, as colonists. Rap music. These are all examples of things that someone said, I wonder if we change this, what it would look like. Okay. The internet, right? All sorts of things that if someone didn't think differently, we would not be beneficiaries of that. Okay, so it's important for you to think about how can you be creative and to make sure that you are doing something so that those creative juices are flowing throughout your educational process. Okay, so there's no such thing as a new idea. So, for example, when I said, man landing on the moon, they basically took information that they knew about airplanes and used some of that engineering in order to develop a space rocket, right? So it's not that, flight was new. It's just how you were able to fly became new. That makes sense? And they did a whole lot of experiments in order for that to happen. This third woman here, Katherine Johnson, you may recognize her from the movie Hidden Figures. She was one who thought about things differently. And if you have not seen the movie Hidden Figures, you should go watch it. It's about African-American women and how they were part of the space program in the 1950s. So these are all examples of people who thought differently and made the world a better place. So don't be scared to do it. Okay, so something that you can do in order to help with your creativity is to track your ideas. Actually write them down, journal them. Okay, if not, you're going to forget them. Maybe do a vision board if you've ever done something like that. That is a great way to have your mind explore what can be. All right, so you can maybe, get a little anxious if you're trying to think about doing something new because maybe it's never been done before, right? But that's what true inventors do is they come up with new innovative ideas, okay? And not everyone's going to follow you, right? They're going to be like, that is so crazy, right? I bet the first person who thought about the internet said, oh my gosh, how can you do that without a phone line? That is nuts. How can you do that? Right? So, but if they just said, oh yeah, you're right, let's not do that. We would not be having this Zoom call right now. Okay. A lot of people may have heard this quote before. We've always done it that way. It takes a real creative thinker and innovator to go against that and go against the grain. Um, I want you to make sure that you're not scared to be creative. You want to surround yourself with other creative thinkers. If you surround yourself with just stagnant people, you're probably going to end up being stagnant. So use others to brainstorm and to talk through your ideas. This is when study groups are really helpful. And I want you to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage you rather than, make you doubt yourself. Okay. So we're going to talk about analytical thinking next. Okay, so analytical thinking is when you work out a problem systematically. Okay, so you might, let's say you have a problem of, I don't know, let me think. Let's say your car breaks down in the rain. Okay, all right, we have a problem here. My car just broke down in the rain. You'd be like, okay, so let's think about all the issues that are going on here. One, it's raining outside. Second, maybe your battery's gone, you can't charge your phone anymore. Third, maybe you don't know where you are. You have to think about like all the different parts of the problem. But it's important to think about all the different parts of the problem because if you don't, you might ignore something that offers you a solution. So maybe you'd be like, okay, well, my battery's dead, but I have a portable charger in my purse, right? Forgot about that. So if you didn't think about having your car battery, being dead, you might not think about the portable charger, right? So as an example. Okay, so analytical thinking is how something like this was created. So this is a warehouse for Amazon. I think Amazon is the best solution to a problem of how to get lots of items out quickly. When I was in college, I always had to wait at least 4 or 5 business days to, receive something in the mail. Now I can order something and by 7 a.m. have it on my doorstep the next day. Okay, this is because they have a systematic way to track shipping, to get things out. Um, and I think that this has probably revolutionized how shipping has occurred. Henry Ford did the same thing when they developed the Model T, and he was the first one who developed the assembly line in creating a car. Before, one single person would develop the car from A to Z, right? But maybe they weren't an expert in tires, right? Or they didn't like putting on tires. That would slow down the process. What Henry Ford did is he found a person who is really good with motors, one who is really good with tires, one who's really good with, I don't know, paint, right? And he put them so that they were able to be expert in that one thing and pass it down the assembly line, and that got cars off the assembly line quicker. All right, so you might be able to, I know this is a stretch, but there's some component parts to a research paper, right? It's important to break down your research paper into different parts, just like creating a car in different parts. That's the outline, it's creating your intro, it's doing your references, it's doing that research summary worksheet, and kind of doing things in order so that you can have the car or the literature review paper at the very end. All right, so these are some things that you've had to do in creating that literature review paper. And hopefully you are at the drafting stage right now because it's coming up soon. If you haven't started your literature review paper yet, probably time to start it. If you have setbacks, do you have a contingency plan? You should not wait until the day the literature review paper is due to actually start your literature review paper. Because what if you get a call and, it's due at 11:59? Let's say you get a call at 9 p.m. for your best friend that says, oh, my car just broke down. And, as we just talked about, cars breaking down. And you have a car and no one else can help them. Don't ask me why they can't do Lyft or Uber. They called you, right? But if you have to go pick them up, that takes 2 hours off of your time that you could be spending towards your literature review paper. Okay. So by starting early, you can kind of plan for the unplanned, turn your paper in early, get the confetti when you hit submit on Canvas, and then it's going to be a beautiful night, right? This is called float, right? Have an extra time just in case something happens, right? Um, hopefully you use this when you go someplace. Let's say Google Maps tells you it's going to take 20 minutes to get someplace. You should always leave at least 25 minutes ahead of time, just in case something happens along the way. Oh, we already talked about Henry Ford, but Frederick Smith is the one who created an overnight delivery service, FedEx, to help get packages there quickly, because he was not happy about waiting 4 to 5 business days like I did when I was in college to get things. Okay, critical thinking skills. This is something that you probably have heard before. If you have never thought deep about something, you might not have been utilizing critical thinking skills. A great example of this is to look at a penny, okay? If you've never looked at a penny before, you can really utilize your critical thinking skills in looking at it. So for example, let's imagine that the world, you know, like something happened in the world and everything was erased from the world except for one single artifact, which is a United States penny. Okay. If aliens came to Earth and that was the last thing that they saw based on this civilization, what are some things that they could decipher about what our civilization was like? Well, they would see a big head of Abraham Franklin on the front, and they could be like, oh, it looks like it's a patriarchal society, right? It says, in God we trust. And by the way, they do know English. Don't ask me why, but the aliens know English. In God we trust, right? They're like, oh, well, they had a religious society. It is metal, so they were able to mine for this metal somewhere. It is cut, so they had to have the machinery to be able to cut. There's a building on the back, so they're able to have architectural skills. Lots of different things that they'll be able to decipher as a result. Okay. When you decide to make your lunch rather than grabbing a bag of chips, you've thought critically, okay? Because you've thought ahead. You had to buy the food, you had to prepare it. You had to do multiple steps in order to get ready to make your lunch, okay? So these are some things that you're able to make obvious choices about. Okay, so some things that you should be thinking about when you're problem solving. You should question everything, ask why. Whatever someone says, ask the question why, and to think deeper and deeper and deeper about something. Always research it, limit what you assume, limit your biases, and look at all options before making a decision. This is a great thing to do before you vote, right? You should not vote just because this is who so-and-so is voting for. You should question their platform, do your own research from unbiased sources, limit what you assume to be true, look at what your own biases are, and look at all the pros and cons and make a decision that way. So sometimes things change, right? Cigarette used to not be thought of as bad, but now after people use their critical thinking skills and problem solving skills and question things, looked at research, recognized biases and limited assumptions, and gather and weighed all opinions, they decided that, yeah, smoking probably isn't the best for you. So it's always important to do it no matter what. Okay. Of course, you're going to have bias. Make sure that you limit your opinions and only have your opinions based on fact, not what you have heard or what you assume. Okay. These are the difference between facts and opinions. I'm sure you know what those are. Facts are always based on truthful statements. Okay, so some things to think about. What is the best way to solve a problem? And why do thinkers create multiple solutions to problems? Okay. Obviously, the more solutions you have, you've probably heard of plan A, plan B, and plan C. The more options you have if something goes wrong. Okay, so here are some steps on solving a problem. First, what is the issue? Okay. People who are able to do this are very marketable in the job world too, because there's lots of problems that might happen with production, services, goods, sales to continue smoothly. So if you can get this down, you're going to be able to market yourself great. So what is the problem? Look at the other perspectives, what other people may think about it. Think of the possible results based on plan A, B, or C. Evaluate the possibilities, get the best result, and talk about what you found out. And see, based on your analysis, what the action items are of what you have to do in order to get that, that solution in place. Okay, so talk about the best approach. You may need creative, analytical, or critical thinking skills, or a combination of all of them to solve the problem satisfactorily. So for example, a manager who sees a barista slip. Okay, let's say you're at Starbucks and you're the manager. You see one of your baristas slip and fall. They drop several drinks in the process. Maybe they're heading towards the drive-through window. Okay, the problem is the worker hurt, right? Another problem, now drinks are not ready for the guests, so they have to be remade. A third problem is production has stopped on all future orders because people are trying to clean up, help the person up. They're not able to take the orders, not able to go to the drive-through. So a good manager has to juggle all of these elements at the same time and resolve the situation as quickly as possible. They have to prioritize needs, like what should be done first. For example, they might have to shift workers off one station to another temporarily, help the injured worker, assist the impatient customers, remake the drinks, things like that. So as a manager who's able to think creatively, analytically, critical think, and problem solve, this might all happen at the same time. Okay, you also need to think about multiple solutions. For example, let's say you're in Europe, you need to figure out maybe the best train and the best bus route in case there's an issue with the train. So this might have happened to you before. You had a plan for the day and then found out maybe the restaurant you want to go to is closed for a private party. You're like, okay, what's plan B? Or there's a public transportation strike. Okay, how do I get to my destination now? Having a backup plan helps you contemplate alternatives to substitute for the original plan. And so it gives you options. So even if you don't have to use plan B or C, it's always good to be prepared. Okay, metacognition. This is basically knowing how you learn. And so how you think about how you think, right? So it's important to know your best way of learning. And this is great for studying as well, and what study methods you should have. So by knowing what type of learner you are helps you think more maturely. Okay, so hopefully your metacognition, you're aware of how you think, and you're able to plan and get ready to learn, kind of set yourself up. They're going to know like how much time I have, what I need to do. Track like how you're doing so far, right? Be able to look at your grades, know what you have to get maybe in order to get an A in the class. You've probably done that before. What you should do now or later, and then assess how well you know the material. That could be during a practice quiz, something like that. All right. Next is information literacy. How do you know if the source you chose is legitimate or not? You probably heard in high school, Wikipedia is not a legitimate choice. It's because anyone can add to it. We've taught you about peer-reviewed journals. That is probably the best valid source because you have blind reviews, and which means that people reviewing don't know who wrote it, right? So they can't have a bias there. And it's important to have multiple blind reviews, which makes it the best paper as possible. Okay, so important to know how to manage your resources, how to keep track of things, whether you use EndNote or what type of method you have in keeping track of all the resources that you've used. It's important to have a plan, and you know what and how to access the sources that you may need. And so we taught you about how to do that through the library, and verifying source validity. .org is different than .com, different than .gov. So knowing the difference between those different extensions. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're not just citing someone's opinion, that whoever you're citing is basing their statements on facts. Okay, so for example, as I mentioned, online research-oriented websites or journal articles are going to be the best for this. Okay, so in order to know how to do this on a website, you need to know who owns it. Is it a professional organization? Look at the About section to know a little bit more about who the organization is. And the domain names, like I mentioned before, can help you out. .edu is based on an educational institution. .gov is a government agent. .org is usually a nonprofit group. So these are great ones to kind of look at a little, you can look at a little bit easier. Okay, talk about Google Docs, Evernote, some good examples of how to keep track all of the citations that you have. Okay, these are the 4 questions I asked you to think about in the beginning. Hopefully you thought a little bit about them throughout this presentation. And that is it for chapter 7. That is it for today. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you at the next session. Have a great night.